Welcome back, AP. So yeah, y'all just left like 5 minutes ago, I think. And we're going to go ahead and pick back up and finish up the Babylonian Captivity and the Great Western Schism, right? So when we were talking about this stuff, Babylonian Captivity was referred to as the time when the papacy, or the pontificate, or the pope, lived in France, right? And it's going to destroy a huge amount of reputation that the church has. And then also, we talked about the Western Schism, right? And the Western Schism was when there were multiple popes and all of the different countries in Europe began to draw a lot of allegiances to these popes based on political ties, old vendettas, anti-war sentiment, losing wars, different stuff like that. Like, for example, England sided with the Italian pope because French sided with the French pope, and then the Germans sided with the Italian pope because they hated the French, and then the Scottish sided with the French pope because they didn't like the English, so facto they sided with the French one because they were allies. So you understand what I'm saying, though, right? Remember, I'm already going to not like somebody one of my friends doesn't like, okay? So they sided with the different popes over different political reasons. Now, anyway, but this is the guy that we left off with today in class, Marsilius of Padua, right? He is an Italian lawyer. He was born 1275, lived to 1342. He is considered the beginner of the Conciliar movement. Wrote his book called The Defender of the Peace, and then he argued against the divided structure of society. If I didn't drill this home enough in class, he argued against the ideas that church should exist separate from government and that one of them is more supreme than the other. He actually argued for the idea that government is superior to the church and that the church actually deals with your existential, spiritual, non-secular life, so the church should be subordinate to the state, right? Now, continuing forward, though, he also offered the idea of the conciliar, that entire idea. The conciliar idea is the idea that the church is led by a council, hence conciliar, instead of actually ran just by one guy being the Pope, right? Because as we can tell so far with a lot of this different stuff, the popes were getting really out of control. They were calling out cardinals, trying to excommunicate people, having feuds with kings and lords and stuff like that. There was actually one, Gregory the 10th, I believe. I'd have to look that up again real quick. He actually took papal supremacy to a new height when he said that every single person that comes to talk to him, whether it be a king, queen, or commoner, must kiss his feet before they speak to him. That's disgusting. I hate feet. They're gross. They're like hands on the bottoms of your legs with like nasty looking fingers, right? Like, ugh. All right, anyway, so check it out, but let's keep going. So what's going to happen to him? What do you think is going to happen to Marsilio? He's going to be excommunicated, right? He was excommunicated and his works were condemned as heresy, right? Now, really, really quickly, just so y'all remember, scholasticism was a big thing at this point. Universities began to come around. People began to be professors, and they used to actually, it was a resurgence of intelligence in the later Middle Ages, right? Yeah. Excuse me. Now, his ideas are going to kind of go viral in a way, and they're going to spread to a lot of different universities, right? So this guy was an English theologian at a university, and his name is John Wycliffe, right? He lived from 1330 to 1384, and he really, really appreciated Marsilius of Padua's ideas, and he actually took them even a step further. He was actually an expert in theology, which if you don't know what theology is, it's religion, and if you don't know what religion is, then it's a basic system of worship. And if you don't know what like Catholicism is, it's like Jesus and stuff, all right? So anyway, but he took Marsilius just a little bit further, and he argued that papal authority has absolutely no business in the secular realm. He also argued, even to a point that this is very important, he also argued that the Bible is the only source of truth, that Scripture alone should be interpreted by you personally, not necessarily by a pope, then trying to relate it back to you, right? He actually, this is really a neat thing, that is one of the leading ideas of Martin Luther that's going to come up in the later 1400s. Star that, circle it. Martin Luther may have not been as radical as everybody thinks he is. It may have just been a state of the times. The fact that the printing press existed when Martin Luther was around might be the only reason that we really, really remember him, right? So, like I said, he argued that that Scripture alone is the basis of belief. He also took some of the original Bibles and translated them into English, right? This was considered an outright discrimination against the Catholic Church because remember, what is the only Language that the Catholic Church used. Good job. I heard you over there, Brett. So Latin. They wrote everything in Latin. And a lot of people believe this was to keep that papal supremic power, right? Because only priests and monks and nuns could read Latin, so they were the only ones allowed to actually transfer the ideas of the Bible, right? So he actually had a lot of the first Bibles written in English, right? And his ideas are going to spread rapidly during the 15th century, and his followers were actually called Lollards. 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 Lollards, all right? Now, that actually comes from... Hey, this isn't that important, but it's a slang Dutch term for someone who mumbles, and they did that because they were talking in very hushed tones. They didn't want anyone to overhear what they were saying, and they also didn't want anyone from the Catholic Church to catch them, right? So anyway, now, he's also going to allow women into his coalition, and he believed that women should be allowed to preach. He actually argued for equality of the sexes under religion. This is a newfangled idea, and how do you think the Catholic Church is going to treat him? That's right, they excommunicated him. All right, so anyway, now they excommunicated him. They besmirched his ideas as heresy. They said if you are caught being a Lollard, you can be brought in front of the Inquisition, which is the church court, and possibly be tortured or put to death, right? Now, cool fact about the Lollards and John Wycliffe is the fact that actually a lot of his work is still lost because the Lollards were trying to keep it a secret, right? And then we have the last guy, Jan Hus, all right? So anyway, Jan Hus, 1370, Jan Hus is, there we go. Sorry, got it back up. Jan Hus, 1372 to 1415, sorry about that. 1415 is actually a Czech professor at the University of Prague, right? All of you are going to end up going to Prague one day. It's kind of the thing you do when you're in college. So it's a lot of fun. I liked it. I was a little old when I went, so it wasn't as much fun, but it is a gorgeous city, right? Just because it's in the Czech Republic doesn't mean it can't be nice. So anyway, but he was a professor in theology in Prague, and he called for the Bible to be translated into Czech, right? And also just because Bavaria was one of the keystones, the Czech Republic was a keystone of the Holy Roman Empire at the time. And his biggest thing is he spoke out against indulgences. Now, if you don't remember what indulgences are from your freshman year world history course, an indulgence is when you would buy sins away, when you would actually pay the church to absolve you of certain sins, right? Now, he spoke out against it, and then yet again, that's another idea that Martin Luther claimed to be his own in his 95 Theses. Are we seeing a trend here a little bit? It might not have actually been as radical as everybody thought he was. So anyway, he gained a huge amount of followers, and his followers were called Hussites, Hussite. But his followers took it even a little bit further. They actually erected some of the very first Protestant churches. They were considered their own new church. So Lutherans weren't the first Protestants, the Hussite church was. But what probably happened is their church got sucked into like the Lutherans or the Presbyterians or the Calvinists later on, right? So, because we don't have Hussites anymore. Now, anyway, then there was this final bit of battling. The Council of Constance, right? The Council of Constance was a massive council that was held in Germany in the county of Constance, right? So, spelled Constance. Now, anyway, goals of this council were threefold, right? Their first goal, end the schism. End the schism, get back to one pope, move the papacy back to Rome, right? Second goal, reform it. Reform the church from the top to the bottom, draw back some of the power of the pope, embrace the idea of the Conciliar movement a little bit, make it more ipso facto, checking and balancing of power. And the third one, wipe out heresy. So go against people, all these people they've excommunicated like Marsilius and like John Wycliffe and like Jan Hus, right? Stop them. And if you didn't notice when this happened, the Council of Constance was actually around 1359. And so that means that Jan Hus was the only one still alive, all right? So with that, they actually called him to attend this council. They actually told Jan Hus, come and attend the council. We'll discuss your ideas a little bit, right? Well, they told him it was going to be safe, but then what ended up happening is they actually tried him, condemned him, and then burned him at the stake, right? Hey, guys, Craig, what's with that torch? Anyway, so the council healed the schism, and it deposed all of the other popes, and then elected one new pope, Martin V, right? So Martin V is coined as the pope that ended the schism. But Martin then did nothing about the other two goals. They ended this, or the other goal. He did not reform anything. He dissolved the council immediately after ending the schism. And so literally, they end the schism, which is a normal thing, but then they wiped out heresy by burning them at the stake, and then he did nothing to reform the church. So as you can tell, during the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church is rotten in its core, right? So that's a huge, huge thing, and these events are going to destroy the reputability of the church with the common people. Speaking of common people, the main thing we'll be talking about tomorrow is life during the late Middle Ages. How was it? What was it like? Was it fun? Was it enjoyable? Was it bad? Was it good? We're going to talk about a lot of stuff that y'all probably haven't heard in a history class before, and it gets into the really interesting stuff. I really talking about like talking about life during the Middle Ages because it's very, very neat. All right, so anyway, but we will get to that stuff tomorrow. I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a good day, AP.